Hey Jeepers, just want to take a quick moment before we start the show to remind everyone to check out Off-Road United's page and Crawling for the Fallen, November 11th through the 13th. This event is near and dear to Kevin and myself, as we also provide readings of the names for the night ride. So if you can, please attend the event or find ways online to support a great cause. And with that, on with the show.
You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Insert spooky music here. That's not really spooky, but hey, Jeepers. I hope you all had a safe and happy Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
That was last night, so you can put away the fake spider webs and hopefully clean up the beer cans and whiskey bottles and etc. that the adults had. No, for the children. Check their candy to make sure it's safe.
Yeah, make sure there's no realtor cards in there.
Yes, oh heavens. So anyway, welcome to the November 1, 2020 On the Trail with Kevin and Scott.
2020? You mean 2022?
Yeah, I know.
Show 173. Got that in.
Show 173. That was coming up next. Anyway, we hope you all had a great Halloween. And now we're ready to move on to the next holiday. Not the Fat Man. Not the Fat Man.
Well,
the Fat Turkey.
After I get done, I will be the said Fat Man. But, you know.
So we look forward to Thanksgiving coming up. Have many things to be thankful for. And hope you all are doing good. And then after that, or even as we get close to it, you can start, talking about that. We just don't want to hear,
You can put your tree up. I just better not hear a Christmas Carol. Like I posted.
They're playing already.
Like I posted on my Facebook, I keep a rock in my pocket. So if someone starts singing a Christmas Carol, I chuck it at them, and that's my Jingle Bell Rock.
Yes, I know it is. Scott has a real personal thing about that, folks. So anywho.
One at a time. One at a time.
There's enough days for all holidays.
Yeah.
We get it, but there's going to be, pretty soon it's going to be, what is it? Hallow Thanks Christmas?
No, it's Ramahana Kwanzmas.
So,
by the way, who are you?
Who are I? We'll get there. Okay. Obviously, on show 173, they ought to know who we are. I'm Kevin, the engineer, the guy that reads instructions, uses the right tools, and most of the time follows those instructions, unless I'm being creative.
Exactly. And I am Scott. I am the heavily caffeinated. What'd you say? Can't hear anything from the Iron Maiden concert last night. Extremely tired parts guy, slapstick parts guy. Pretty much, yes. So, as always, while we will share what worked for us as well as what didn't, it's always up to you to do your research, read the instructions, and please follow them when you decide to do something to your Jeep, because I left that part out.
Yeah, well, and the whole thing we ask you to do is do what you want, not what everybody tells you to.
Yeah, you want to duck a Jeep? Duck a Jeep. I don't care.
Yeah,
that's
yourself happy.
That's your happiness.
Maybe you want to pig a Jeep. I mean, they're little pink piggy things. Yeah, I don't care. Hey, I got a duck that's got a donkey head on it from somebody, and it's actually the weirdest thing, but it's so cool.
That would be it.
Thank you, Knoxville.
Never mind. I tried to blend the two words together and going family show.
Family show, exactly. There are many wrong things I could say about that one. But anywho, continuing on in the theory of Jeeps, which is really the point of this podcast. We've got some neat topics we're going to cover. Some of them maybe even slightly controversial.
Jab. Let's just poke the parts guy. Jab.
Well, the parts guy came in when I brought up the subject, and he
set me off like a model rocket. It's like, there goes Scott. Wow, he got up there that time. Oh, his chute for his parachute is right over here.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt.
So, as well as some great questions from some listener. And we want to share that information as well as some other information for you guys and generally just talk Jeep stuff.
Oh, and I have been given instructions that we can tease and talk a tiny bit about project stunt work. Yes.
Yeah.
We have been given the green light.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome because we kind of busted our butt a couple weekends
Yes.
ago, and we brought something to life.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. It's alive.
That it is.
Well, I guess we can't really hide it since it's on Facebook now, if you know the person to look under.
But we'll get to that later on.
Yeah, we will. So, hey, first thing we're going to talk about is kind of a little discussion, kind of a little bit of a public service announcement.
Oh, boy.
The one that set the bottle rocket off and to my right here. And that is there have been a lot of reports recently of the automatic or electric disconnect axles on JTs, the Gladiators,
And the
a
JLs.
few JLs breaking at the disconnect, which is causing a flurry of snide comments about hate mail and weak and garbage and other adjectives that make Scott turn bright red, which really sets off nice against the green Iron Maiden T-shirt he's wearing right now. And what we thought we'd kind of touch on this topic with some thoughts.
Yeah.
If you're expecting us to pass judgment, sorry, you're going to be disappointed. I will tell you this, that all the digging I could do, that Jeep Chrysler has not actually released an official response to this.
Yeah.
All right. Which is causing more fervor on the kibitzing pages and where people are going, oh, see, they're hiding something. And let's start about it. First off, I've heard a whole lot of people, oh, it has thinner axle tubes. And my answer to that is that's immaterial. The fractures are not happening in the axle tubes. The fractures are actually happening when they happen in the disconnect housing, which is a casting that joins two passenger side tubes. So the tube thickness is obviously not the issue here, folks. There's two camps out there. One is defective part. The other is abuse by owner. There have been an unofficial post or two, and I don't want to get the individual in trouble, on Gladiator pages, that if these are new Jeeps, a recent one was reported with only 7,000 miles.
On factory tires.
On factory tires, not abuse was the claim.
Yeah.
But why are they taking it to a third-party shop and not back to the dealer under warranty?
Because that's a safety item.
That is a safety item and would be covered. But even under 7,000 miles, it'd be under just GP warranty.
You pretty much have up to 12,000 miles to get away with even trim.
Yeah. So what I'm saying here is the stories aren't adding up.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what do I think is going on? All right. Well, if you guys have listened to some earlier shows, and I'm talking way back several years ago, we talked about what is the term, and I'm going to use the term now, not to say that it's damaged, but that it's called a broken axle, not because it's broken in the fact that it's failed, but it's broken because the passenger side shaft is in two pieces. And then there's a coupling ring with gear teeth inside, spline teeth actually, that slides and joins those two together. That's your axle disconnect. Correct. And it allows the drive shaft not to turn. I don't think it's a great answer personally as an engineer, because it's still, the driver's side wheel is still turning and there is no disconnect on the driver's side, which means that that stub axle shaft in the axle is still spinning the spider gears. Now, the spider gears just spin as a four set, going around and around and around inside the differential housing, but that doesn't turn the ring gear because there's no balancing force from the passenger side that would cause full rotation. So yes, it saves fuel and drag and the other things, and it makes steering better. And coming from a guy who has manual hub disconnects, I understand disconnecting the load from the wheels, the spinning the drive shaft and the differential all the time does make handling better. That's one of the reasons I did what I did. Yeah. So kudos on the thought process, but I think it could have been better done with hubs. Yeah. But that's just my opinion. All right. Now, why is it breaking? Well, there's really only two things that can make it break. One is a flaw in the casting. Right. And when I say a flaw, it could be a design flaw. it's not strong enough, or it could be a material flaw in the manufacturing that bad alloy was used, or the cast iron or the cast whatever it is. I haven't even had the chance to go out and scratch on Scott's because he gets upset when I scratch the paint off so I can see if it's aluminum, cast iron, or cast steel.
Nice.
I'm going to guess that it's cast steel because that's what the old one was. And cast steel is a pretty dang strong material, but it's nowhere near the strength of tubing that's either been DOM, drawn over a mandrel, or rolled and welded, which most axle housings are rolled and welded.
Right.
The rolling and welding isn't the greatest, but either way, the strength of a rolled steel is far greater than a cast steel. It has to do with the grain structure and the way the material's handled. Metallurgy. But on the other hand, you just make the casting thicker to make up for it. So I don't know. And like I said, Jeep Chrysler hasn't made an official announcement about the castings. Go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna chime in because I literally, as we were talking, this just popped in my head.
Oh, great.
Well,
an unplanned thought.
Exactly. Let's be honest. An axle breaking to me would be a serious safety issue. Okay,
it would.
Now, most of us in my generation have heard of a company called Firestone in the Ford Explorer. Okay,
I had a set of Firestone tires that I went over a bridge abutment and had both front tires blow at the same time. Just going over the expansion joint was enough of a shock, and bam! And I was panicked because I was in the West Virginia coming down a mountainside with a friend.
Right.
And I automatically reached over and tapped the brakes, and not a thing to do when you have blown front tires. And we went sideways, and I managed to recover in the middle of this freeway. And I looked over at my friend named John, and I said, John, gently pull up keep your thumb on the latch, but pull up on the emergency brake and energize the rears.
Yeah.
And managed to get safely pulled off on the side of the road with shredded front tires.
Yeah.
And to this day, it makes heart palpitations every time I remember that incident.
Well, on top of that, also, because I used to work for Lexus. I don't mind talking about it. I used to work for Lexus, and they came into the same, moving forward, whether you want to or not, where the car would accelerate.
Yep.
So this just popped in my head. If there was a serious issue, they would be investigating it, and there would be some information. That's my thought process.
Well, yes and no. I am absolutely sure that Jeep Chrysler's investigating right now. Mm-hmm. Because even if it's not their fault, they want to know what's going on because everybody's pointing the finger at them.
But if it's been doing it since the JL, which came out in late 2018, that's how many years?
Yeah, but how many is it happening? Again,
yeah.
You don't hear, there aren't a billion posts out, well, several million posts. Hey, today my Jeep didn't break.
I'm going to do that now. I'm going to post on right now.
Okay. But do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All you ever hear about
is negative.
You hear the problems. You don't hear, okay, I've seen one post that said, oh, God, I had 3 in my shop. Mm-hmm. Okay, how many of you had in your shop for the lift? How many of you have in the shop for new tires, for suspension? Okay.
How many other buzzing on 37s and 35s right now? JLs and Gladiators.
So again, and I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm saying that you only hear bad news.
What's the X factor?
So what I'll comment to you guys, being the tech guy here, if you have that axle, Scott,
nice.
Periodically slide under. It doesn't break all at once.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a cast iron thing, and that's an old gray cast iron. Mm-hmm. Guys, there's gray cast and nodular. Nodular was used in differentials and axles and stuff in the 60s and 70s before they figured out how to successfully cast steel, because cast steel is still even stronger than cast iron.
Yeah.
It fractures, and then fractures, use a big word here, Scott, propagate.
Yeah.
Okay. If you simply, when you're cleaning your Jeep or something like that, stick your head under the passenger's front end and look at the disconnect and kind of look close if there's cracks around that outer rim. It's got a thickened edge where that little stub tube goes from the steering knuckle into the disconnect, and then there's a thickened edge on the disconnect going into the tube that goes to the differential. There'll be hairline cracks. Mm-hmm. At that point, stop. Do not proceed. Do not pick up $200. Head to your Jeep dealer, or if it's not under warranty, contact a shop. Mm-hmm. You're in a failure mode. I don't really think, and no, a hose clamp won't fix it, Scott. Nor a zip tie.
The big heavy duty industrial ones for AC ducts.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually part of my routine maintenance on the Jeep when I go ahead and do my oil changes or rotations is because I know this is a failure issue.
Yeah.
Where the track bar mounts to the driver's side on the frame.
Correct. Same sort of thing. You check for.
I peek once in a while.
And there's some neat little things that you can do. Yes, you can go out if you're really scared, okay, like you've been jumping railroad tracks for the last week. Maybe.
Oh, there goes tomorrow's plans.
Maybe you should go invest in what they call a crack dye kit. Okay, which is just you clean everything up real good with brake clean, let it dry, spray it with the thing, and follow the instructions, and you can see if there's a crack that you normally wouldn't see. I'm not trying to drive it to you, but I'm an engineer.
I'm just sitting going, but see, those things cannot work.
They work very well.
No, I'm going to draw a line in the sand. They cannot work because how come there's so much plumber crack? If those kits worked, there would be so much less plumber's crack.
It doesn't fix them. Oh. It just highlights them.
Never mind. They're highlighted enough. Moving on. Family show. Sorry, I had to do that. Caffeine's kicking in.
But that's only if you're completely paranoid about it. Generally speaking, steel doesn't. I shouldn't say this because it does.
Yeah,
but
careful.
Steel will usually yield before it does a brittle fracture.
Yeah.
In other words, it doesn't just kabang from no crack to falling apart.
Yeah.
It can. I'm going to be honest with you. It can if you're doing the other word.
Well,
abuse.
But that's like shock load territory.
Yeah, you're in the shock load. You're actually jumping your Jeep.
Being the Duke boys.
Yeah. So you get the idea. But right now, if you're concerned, keep an eye on it. The simplest thing. I mean, this is not really, it is from a life safety point of view, but we all know that there's a bunch of TJs running around with only half a frame.
He's not wrong, folks, and you all know that right now.
And I go, people, don't you ever look? Oh, I didn't think. I mean, we know of one that drove around where the driver's side frame on the rear haunch from the bottom of the floor pan up to the spring mount was basically
the body was holding it together,
non-existent. I helped replace the pieces. Yes, there was a couple of pieces holding it together, so that was enough that the tire didn't wander. But it was way off true.
Yeah, it had two pieces holding it together, a wing and a prayer.
Yeah. So here's the thought: is yes, there's an issue going on. I'm not going to say a problem. I'm not going to say a fault. There's an issue that you should be aware of if you have an automatic disconnect.
Yeah.
There have been reports of the coupling, the housing of the actual axle disconnect cracking and failing. All right. I haven't seen it come up on a news bulletin that it was a recall.
Yeah.
But if you're concerned about that, look at your rig. Don't just go, well, drive it till it fails, because it's pretty bad when it fails.
Well, and the other thing too is like when you talk about taking that time to look at that and see these posts and all that, you gotta separate the feelings from facts.
You do. You absolutely. And funny coming from you.
I was literally getting ready to say, and I'm the worst proponent of it because sometimes it's hard not to feel attacked.
Yeah,
because these are rigs. It doesn't matter what you drive unless you're a Bronco owner.
Okay,
but the point is that I'm just joking. I had a funny post about that here in a second. But it's interesting that people take their rigs seriously. It's an emotional,
it's a
money
personal investment. Yep,
and it's a sense of expression. But back to the Bronco thing. This has got kind of funny on the Dealership Life page I'm on.
I'm sorry for people. IR1.
Hold on. People are complaining. The Bronco owners are like, well, wait a minute. I brought a Bronco. This soft top shouldn't be this loud on the highway, and it shouldn't be leaking water.
They're new to the environment.
I know. And it's like...
I'm like, let me go back and get a 64 Bronco that had a steel roof and leaked just as bad as the soft top and rattled.
And the worst part is because of the used car, people are paying a premium over these prices, it's like when we had the JK, even the Gladiator now, it's an expensive vehicle, but I'm like, I only paid X amount of dollars for it. And then one guy put, well, at least he didn't pay $80,000. Oh, never mind. Because again, you bought a Jeep, not a Jaguar. You know,
Yes,
they
yes,
both
yes.
run about the same. But the point is that
True.
Yeah, but
True.
so back onto the other side.
Yeah. So anyway, we just thought we'd bring that up to you guys that if you do have just keep an eye on it. If you see a hairline crack starting to develop, you know, or even something suspicious, take it into your dealer. Or if you have a favored mechanic who is, how do I want to put this without insulting a bunch of mechanics, who is comfortable and competent
Yes.
at inspecting a structural member like an axle. Because if it does happen to you, now, I'll be honest with you, if you're running street tires and normal, you're less likely to have this develop. On the other hand, if you live in Pennsylvania or you start running the railroad tracks in parts of New Jersey, you know what I'm talking about if you live there. What was that? Oh, that was just a 3-row crossing. Did you have to do it at 60? Well, yeah, the speed limit's 35, so 60 is about right. Anyhow.
The thoughts and opinions expressed on
Are
the show
mine.
are not necessarily those of Ben Axel Media and it's along our
Except that what's the name of our media corporation?
Ben Axel.
This is such an apropos topic. Anyhow, this is one of the... Go ahead.
I had to.
You had to.
We pay for the button. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So what we're trying to do is give you guys a little bit of a head start if you own this equipment to keep. It'd be no different if you had a brand of tire that was known for, you know, like Firestone falling apart. Unfortunately, we'd give you the heads up. Did every Firestone 500 blow apart? No. Not even the vast majority of them blew apart. Just a few.
Yeah.
It's the same thing here. At the moment, it's just a few. At the moment, Chrysler's officially silent on it because, again, there's some conflicting reports, conflicting pictures, and conflicting information. If you guys have a picture of a broken axle tube, I'd love to see it, okay? And then know the honest conditions around the failure, okay? Were you on the trail? Did you jump a tree? Did you hop a ravine? Did you do the pipe pit? Boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
Scott, I wouldn't be surprised if I broke an axle climbing the pipe mountain on the obstacle course many years ago where I broke your tailbone and blew out the shock absorber mounts.
Blew out more than that.
Yeah. So
Lower lumbar.
But, this is the point, folks, is, if we know it honest, but every picture that I've been able to see and blow up, it is not the tube that is failing. So you probably don't have as much concern there. It is the actual cast housing. It has to be cast because you would not be able to afford the Jeep if they CNC machined it out of billet steel. It would, 1 space shuttle, 2 space shuttle, 3 space shuttle. Yeah. 4.
Well, I do have to just to parlay this because, again, knowing now, teaser folks, having 80 years of history in my stable at the moment.
Oh,
bad.
bad.
Is that, because people, again, one of the things I see is, why did they do this? It was a terrible design.
Yeah, you
technology
got to see the technologies from a certain year.
Yes, technology progresses, and again, I love my LJ. That to me, that is that sweet spot.
Well, yeah,
just enough creature comfort to have air conditioning and not sweat to death, and enough thick sheet metal to hold in the air conditioning. But it's so when people come in with these, well, they should have never done that. Should have stayed with the TJ. Should have did this. Should have done that, and all that. It's guys, technology.
Look at the sales number; they're doing okay.
Yeah,
and they're doing what people want. Maybe not what you want, but they're doing what people want.
Well, if the last Jeep you bought was a TJ in 2004, no offense, Jeep sells vehicles.
Yeah.
But
that's their job.
That's
folks.
their job. But moving on from that, 2 dozen, 1 half 10 the other.
Keep an eye on it, folks. Let me know if you have different opinions. I'd love to have a discussion on this again with some folks that maybe have experienced it. Scott absolutely flatly refused to go out and jump his Gladiator so that we could have an experience, internally. But if you've had that break, if you have pictures of a broken front axle, I mean, I've got some shops that have sent me some pictures and I've got them online. I've looked at them. Again, I'm looking at it as an engineer going, okay, what was the failure mode analysis? And of course, I'm sorry to say, just like when people go to their doctors or when people go to court, they rarely tell you the whole truth, nothing but the truth. there's always loads of opinions. I mean, we're human. We can't, it's just automatic that we give our own opinion, as opposed to the flat out forensics. So, am I telling you that there's no problem? No. They broke, okay? They are not bulletproof in the sense that there's been no reported failures. On the other hand, I'm not hearing that every JT on the road is splitting an axle and coming to a stop in a grinding flurry of sparks and gouged asphalt. So, trying to be graphic there.
Yeah, no. Gouged asphalt's my auto bag.
And so, like to know what you guys think.
Yeah. Speaking of, do you want
let's segue in.
Yeah, just move right in. Patrick sent us a couple emails, and man, you guys are going great. We always love getting the feedback from you guys, but he had a couple questions.
He did. And Patrick's basic question is, I got an old Jeep, and I don't remember the year. I'm sorry, Patrick, I don't have your email in front of me, but an older Jeep.
I'm thinking like a 99.
Yeah, like a 99 TJ, Gen 1. And he's come across that's getting tired. The motor's kind of, consuming more oil than gasoline, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, it's a hybrid. Yeah. It burns gas and oil.
Yeah, diesel gas motor. But anyhow, whatever. He didn't say that, folks. I'm just laughing because he says he's got an old motor and he's got a 05, I believe, donor motor that's in much better shape. And his question is a very simple and honest one. If I take all the sensors off the 99 and take all the sensors out of the 05, can I swap the engines in and will it run?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is, of course, Patrick, a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. First thing I want to do, Patrick, is give you a suggestion. You ask if I had any references for you, and I do. I have a book that I like very, very much, and I'm going to make sure that you and everybody else out there.
Now, this is a book, not an app.
Yes, this is a old-fashioned thing made with tree pulp, and
you can't zoom in the pictures by pinching them.
No. It is a book by its published SA Design. They had a series called Workbench How-Tos, and they're little paperback manuals. Larry Shepard was the author, and Larry gets full credit for a lot of the information that I'm going to share with you. If it's my opinion or my intent, I will make sure and tell you separately. So please give credit to Larry and to SA Design. The manual I'm talking about is SA 294, and the title is Jeep 4.0 Engines. How to Rebuild and Modify. It's a great workbench series.
Yep.
It goes into great depth on how to identify,
4.0 Bible.
Service, overhaul, and hot rod.
Yeah.
And so if you want to get that, I believe it is still available from Amazon. I think the last published date that I have is 2014. Let me just check that again. Yeah, Larry Shepard, 2014. So please, credit to him, kudos to him, and if this sparks your interest, it's a great reference manual. Go buy it and actually put it in a little safe place because it is paper, and I have not seen it out in electrons. So let's get on with your question. It's a qualified kinda. Oh,
yep, still available. $29 on Amazon.
Okay, there you go. Way to go, Scott.
$29 from to November 2022.
Yes, way to go, Scott. What I'm going to tell you, we're going to start by pieces, all right? And then we're going to hit some of the problems. Number one, what I want you to do is share you some information that was great from this book. Since the 4.0 has been produced since 1987, all the way up through 2005, and before you panic, yes, enough was produced in 5, and due to the machining time, to be actually used in the 06 model year. So it actually is installed through 06. Just a few of them were produced, about 4.9 million. How's that for a production run? So even though the Cash for Clunkers took a big bite out of that, it's still around. Yes.
I have to stop because I saw the ratings real quickly, and I just had to stop. A 1-star rating, no pictures. I'm staring at the book. It's got pictures.
Why would every page has got pictures in it.
Why would you give up? My ADD moment kicked in. People, I apologize. I just had to see the reviews for a second. But who gives 1 star with no pictures when the book itself has a picture on the cover?
So anyhow, let's get back to the point.
Yes.
The blocks in the entire production run are basically the same casting. Mm-hmm. There may be, and this is Kevin's experience, there are slight variances in some of the mounting bosses in that some of them were drilled and tapped that later models. It's actually kind of, by going backwards, there's a slight difference, Patrick. And going backwards, you're probably okay because there were more things tapped and drilled.
Yeah, you said like the fuel injecting rail, right?
Yeah, or the spark plug, the coil bar, and then other things. So kind of just double check that you can put your bolt in everything, and if you can't, you can always mark the spot, center punch it, drill it, and tap it. Cast iron does tap pretty dang easy as long as you don't over drill and go into the water jacket or the oil gallery. Oops. But the block, yes, definitely should be swappable. The bore, the stroke, the crank, all of that is shown as being the same. The head, not quite the same.
We'll stick a pin in that.
Well, no, let's just go ahead and jump into the swamp to start with. There are 3 different head series that were used on that engine. I had it tabbed here. Give me a sec so that I get you the right information. Yep. There are a series number called the 7120, which was typically used they called it the raised port head. From 91 to 95 was manufactured, used through 96.
Right.
It's considered one of the strongest and best heads and would work on your engine, but you're not going to get that on 05. There's an in-between head that is, I'm looking for the numbers, my problem. I don't see the number. These numbers are in the casting, inside you'd have to take the valve cover off to see them. Between usually 3 and 4 or 4 and 5 will be 4 digits.
Gotcha.
The more modern one is called the 0331.
Right.
And that's the one that your 05 engine will have on it. And this is not to scare you, kind of like the subject we just talked about.
Yeah.
There were some cracking of that head design between 3 and 4 cylinder that would have a linear crack. And while there was much to do about this when that was the common engine and not the antique engine, as I've been referred to.
Nice.
I'm an antique under that definition. The truth is, almost every case you can show that it was mistreated from not just one, but multiple thermal shocks and overheats and boilovers and radiator failures and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
The funny thing is this is a water jacket crack in the head, and very, very rarely actually stopped the engine from running. You just had mysterious coolant loss and coolant showing up in the oil.
Kind of like your money.
Yeah, pretty much. And of course, shameless plug here. Some of us just went to the Edelbrock head.
Can you still get those?
They are no longer manufactured, or I should say, what's the official tag? They're in a production hiatus because demand hasn't. The engine's no longer being built new.
Yeah.
However, there are stocks. We have a listener who found out that, I can still buy it through some of the speed shops and those kind of things that have stock. So they're still out there if you want them. But again, you're asking me if you can just plop an engine in. Yeah, you can plop that engine in. There are some differences. In your model engine, you got to check where is your temperature sensor. Some of the versions of the 4-liter have a temperature sensor mounted in I think it's about a 1/2-inch threaded hole at the back of the head.
Right.
On the driver's side where the intake system is, there's a little bit of that head that the valve cover doesn't cover in the corner. And That's where the temperature sensor is located on some of the earlier 4.0s. Now, some of those earlier ones go back, but yours may be one, since yours is a transitional year right there, So you need to check that. Whereas, of course, most of us who deal with the later series all know the the old thermostat in the temperature sensor in the thermostat housing up front. Mm-hmm. So can you do the swap between the two? Absolutely. The bung is still there in the head. On the modern ones, it's got a pipe plug in it. You'll just have to remove the pipe plug in the back and put the smaller temperature sensor in there, because the wire ain't going to reach, and the two sizes are completely different sensors. But the hole's there, and you can just get yourself I think it's 3/4 inch pipe plug at Home Depot or that low place, and screw, put a little pipe and plug the old thermostat hole, or like most of my friends do, they just leave the later model thermostat in there disconnected, and it plugs the hole very well.
Thermostat or
I'm sorry, I keep saying thermostat. The temperature probe.
Temperature probe. Okay. I just want to make sure I was hearing you right.
Yeah. The other thing to keep an eye on is some of the engines. Now, I know it's really common in the XJs and WJs, was they had a 90-degree oil filter adapter. All right. Those, if yours is one of those, it showed up in a few TJs, and I'm not sure why. But if it is, you just move the adapter over. But the boss on the block is cut and machined the same. So it's just a big old O-ring there, and you can put that on there. Motor mounts are the same position, slight variances through the years, but that's just a normal slight variances through the year.
Yeah.
Trying to think of the other things in there. Of course, you're going to have to pull out the OPDA. If you're going to do that, make sure you know how to go to top dead center on compression stroke for cylinder 1, because you have a different cam position sensor. There were 3 different versions used over the years, and your wiring harness will not work with the later OPDA. It's not just a plug in, plug out. Right. So you'll just take your OPDA version that you have, which is usually a small head version, and put it down in the hole at the timing marks. It's like the distributor. You're going to have to fuss with the oil pump drive to get it lined up, but it's no different than if you were doing that service, on a regular vehicle. The key is keeping everything in time, which means going to where your crank position, your top dead center. Unfortunately, if it's like my 05 and Scott's 05, there are no timing marks on the dampener anymore.
Yeah. So
you kind of have to do the old put your thumb over the number 1 hole, wait till you feel compression stroke come up, and then see if you can get yourself up to top dead center, which means taking the OPDA head off and see if the sensor is in the right area. There's alignment holes that you can kind of put a drill bit through. It's like an 1/8 inch drill bit to and then you'll slowly remove the distributor. It's going to turn counterclockwise on you. The head will stay the same, and then it'll come out. And you've got to take yours from your engine and put it so it's in kind of the same orientation, and then slide it back in and really hope like heck that the oil pump drive lines up. If not, you're going to be sticking a screwdriver down the hole, a long screwdriver, and trying to get the oil pump drive. Don't crank the engine over. Just turn the oil pump until you can get this thing down in the right spot so that the OPDA, which is oil pump drive assembly, which is really a cam position sensor, to where its forks that clamp it down are facing the right direction.
Right.
Hopefully that all makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense.
So there's some challenges there, but those are minor. Starter motor should fit, no problem. I don't believe there was any change in the bolt patterns over the years on the block. Nothing's published that I can find that tells me otherwise, so I'm just going that one on pretty much personal experience. The intake manifold is the biggest thing. You're going to have, I don't know if your motor has the log type intake manifold or the horseshoe type manifold, okay? They both bolt up the same, but it will necessitate that if you try to pull the entire 05 engine and put it in situ, and your old one had a log and your new one has the horseshoe flows air better, but stuff's moved around as far as wire length and hose connections. So you can do that, or you can just get new head exhaust gaskets and replace with your older intake if it's a different intake.
Right.
Don't be surprised over the years if you're the newer one. Let's say they both are horseshoe. You're going to find that, oh, wait a minute, the vacuum port here is plugged on that one. Just move it over. They're just pipe plugs. Use a little bit of Teflon tape. I like to double up because of the coarseness of the casting. I'll put a couple of wraps of Teflon tape on the threaded portion of the hose connection, the barb piece.
Right.
And then I'll actually then coat that with a little bit of the white Teflon sealer. Or the yellow is actually better because it's gas and oil resistant. And then thread that into the hole, get it snug, give it a little extra grunt. Here's the warning. Tightening pipe plugs, okay? Plugs or fittings into cast aluminum. Big danger. It will split the aluminum. If you get, what's got, more than one
Ugga-Duggas.
Well, half an Ugga-Dugga is about it.
Yeah.
It's easier to pull it back out and reseal it than it is to go get another one because you split the bloody casting out.
Yeah. Be careful.
Be careful. It really, there's no benefit to tight, as they say. Right. It's about sealing. So it just needs to be in. I usually go to seat it and turn it a quarter turn. And if it's leaking, if it's sucking air through that thing, then stop, unscrew it. And I've actually gone to the point of having to pack the threads of the fitting, pack the whole threads with my finger, sticking it in there. Try and keep it out of the intake manifold, but you can take your throttle body off and reach in most of those places with a long stick.
Yeah.
Those wooden sticks with the cotton swab on the end that they use for detail cleaning, you can get those at various hobby stores and stuff like that if you have to. And quite frankly, a little bit of sealant isn't going to really hurt the engine.
Yeah.
And then go ahead and gently wrap it with the Teflon tape again and put it in again. I've had to do it 2 times, and to get a good seal without over torquing the manifold. Same thing goes with the, if you take the manifold off, it's really tempting to Ugga-Dugga the bolts that hold the intake and the exhaust manifold on because they jointly hold it on with this big cup-shaped steel washer. The torque specs on that aren't that high. Follow, get yourself a service manual, or this guidebook has them in there. I'm not going to go hunt the page up while we're on the show here, but
Right.
But it's not as strong as you think. It might be in the 20 foot-pound range. Is not the thing is you'll crack the ears off the aluminum manifold. You will not necessarily crack the steel exhaust header, but you will bust the ears off the aluminum. I've seen lots of beautiful horseshoe manifolds, which I think of everybody with a log manifold that, boy, that's a cheap, quick upgrade. That plus some hose and maybe a little wire. You can pick up, 20 horsepower, or maybe not that much, but 15, 10. But
It breathes better.
they're broken and they're sitting and I know the shop that people bring it in and he looks at it and goes, well, there's another one. And you go in the junkyard, and because they've been getting them from the junkyard, there's a lot of 4 liters with no intake manifold. So caution on that one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There's really nothing else. Yes, the idea will work. Yeah, it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. As most swaps, the devil's in the details.
Yeah. No,
So pay attention. Take lots of pictures. Cell phones work really well.
Notes.
Good lighting. Take lots of pictures from different angles. Make sure that you can see anything. And, oh, by the way, if you do, and it sounds like I'm selling the book. I am not selling the book, to be honest with you. But this is one of the things that I have not seen in any other service manual. That this has, and bear with me as I flip my pages back.
Abracapocus.
Yeah, that too.
Well, just one step further, we talk about getting a
But I was
whiteboard.
just going to say, page 15 starts with engine sensor location and removal. How's that for helpful?
There you go.
With pictures.
Yay. Take that, Amazon reviews.
Yeah, so Larry did an outstanding job putting together.
And their color pictures.
Yeah, they really are. So just so you know that information is available for a few bucks.
Well, like we talked about before, like getting a whiteboard and write things down, take good notes, like you said, with the pictures, and just being patient and taking your time and thinking it out.
Yeah. Nothing is more heartrending too than when you drop the new engine in and you get everything tightened down and you look and go, well, where's this connector? And you realize you see a set of wires going in between the bell housing of the engine and the transmission, and it's crimped down and sugar daddy.
Well, you were also talking about alignments or something like that, because the engine is actually over a smidge.
Well, that's
the next one.
That's the next topic we're getting to. He's good with segues, guys. You know that?
Well,
so anyway,
not with that, I was also getting the caffeine's hitting, and I'm also doing everything else. Yeah,
Anyway, Patrick, hopefully that goes well for you. Thank you again very, very much for the question. I had a lot of fun digging up since I moved. My wife and I moved to the new house. Of course, I had to go find this. I knew I had the book, but
right.
Well,
there's another book that you got me that was it had a bunch of ways like maintenance and everything. It covered everything from adding electrical and all that. So I might find the name of that book.
Yeah, find that. There's some great references that aren't expensive that can really help you understand what you're doing. It does require a little bit of effort of taking the time to sit down with a cold beverage and adequate light and read it, and I like Larry's write-up in this thing, and no, I've never met the man, but it's very readable. It's very understandable. It's not way off in left field. I mean, and he, you don't have to tell anybody you don't know something, because now you can read it without embarrassment. He talks about things like, for example, I flipped it open randomly, and he's got a little block here that says rod center to center distance. And he talks about that and why is it important. And, it's a commentary. He shows how bearings fit in there. He actually does a cutaway drawing that shows the oil paths so that you know what you're working with, and pictures of worn bearings and good bearings, and, just kind of neat. And
it's a good reference.
Yeah, it's a great reference. And then one of the things I like is you get back into the section that's how to hot rod, the engine. And it's not a do-all tell-all. It's not about necessarily, he talks about strokers, but he also talks about, simple things that you can do that will either help reliability or help you with a little bit of horse pressure.
Horse pressure, that's funny.
I'm sorry, that's an old joke. So let's see, where was that section? Or maybe it was just written up in the I think that was written in the middle. Gotcha. So anyhow,
it's a good book.
It's a good little book, and it's not thick. It's a whopping 3/8 of an inch thick, so you can read it in an afternoon because it's got a lot of pictures in it.
Well, the best part is as you're reading that, you don't have to read anyone else's snarky comments.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So with that, again, Patrick, thanks. Now let's move on to the third and probably more or less final issue.
Patrick, with the lean.
With the
TJ lean.
And it also comes from Patrick. Yes, that's right. I'm sorry, Patrick. I had a senior moment there.
Sorry. As you can tell, Kevin and I go through a lot of information before we record.
He had, and unfortunately, I normally sit here with a little pad and jot notes to myself with bullet points so that I don't forget something.
Yeah.
He asks me, he said he'd heard about this thing called the TJ lean. What is it? Yeah. And do I have to worry about it? Well, Patrick, it's real simple. A lot of TJs developed a lean. Sometimes it was to the passengers. Sometimes it was to the driver's side. Most of the time it was to the back.
Yeah, the LJ
squad.
had the Carolina squad.
And it has to do with the fact that the spring rate, little tech here, spring rate is thrown around. A lot of people don't understand. It's a very, very simple concept. And that is, if I put 100 pounds on the spring, how much did it compress? Linear or straight spring rate means that if it compressed with 100 pounds, it moved a half an inch, and you put another 100 pounds, it'll move 1 inch. If you put 300 pounds, it's 1.5 inches. It's linear. It moves the same amount as it squishes down until the coils collapse. And that's just an arbitrary number I grabbed. On the other hand, there is nonlinear. And nonlinear is just what it says. Maybe the first squish of 100 pounds is a half an inch. The second 100 pounds is only 3/8 of an inch. And maybe it takes 300 pounds to move another half an inch. It's not linear. A good example of that is progressive rate coils like our buds at Metal Cloak use. I'm sorry, got crud in the throat.
We had a busy week of working outside too.
Yes, in sawdust and stuff. So progressive rate coils, well, they could get softer, but they don't. I mean, it doesn't work that way. But in theory, each inch takes more pressure than the last inch did for it to collapse, and those are becoming pretty much the norm.
Yeah.
Well, where that comes into, though, is that TJ's, the factory coils, just the back end was a softer spring rate than the front end because that's where all the weight is. And over time, they settled.
Yeah.
And so you got a droopy butt. And
Chapter 4 in my autobiography.
yes, you can replace the coils. Okay, and if you put factory coils in, it's just going to start over again. Or you go to aftermarket coils, but even some of those have been known to develop a little bit of the droopy back end. And in my case, I did aftermarket coils, and they also drooped a little bit. Not bad. It didn't hurt handling. It didn't hurt performance.
It hurt your eye.
Hurt my eyes to see the back lower than the front. I'm not a bulldogger. I fixed it with simple set of 1-inch spring spacers that go on the top of the springs, not on the bottom for this situation, because the top's stable and the bottom is not. It's moving. Right. And in fact, I actually used a takeoff set that one of my shops had pulled out of a JK that had the top mounts, and I think it was a bottom spacer and a JK that goes into the top of the rear TJ fine.
Nice.
And don't hold me to that. I'm remembering from years ago now.
Yeah. Been a while.
And it was just a matter of jacking up the Jeep one side at a time, loosening the shock, and continuing to jack until the spring got loose. In my case, with the Metal Cloak dual rates, they kept following, and I ended up having to use this little coil spring to compress the compressor to pull it down enough to slide the spacer into the seat, and then let it back up again, and then went over to the other side and did the same thing, reconnecting the shocks as I went. And it boosted it back up and actually had a neat side effect. The rubber isolated the spring, the 1-inch bushing rubber isolated the spring from the metal of the Jeep body, a Jeep frame, better than the little thin rubber disc that they put in there that's only about an 1/8 inch thick. And the ride became much quieter and much more comfortable.
A lot less clanky.
So it was kind of one of those, secondary benefit to it. And it gave me, and I'll be honest, 1 inch was probably too much, but I happen to like a little bit of forward rake. I'm an old hot rod guy. I remember the big and littles, and that kind of thing. So important thing. If you do this and you do get the back end up, go get your front end realigned, because you will change your caster significantly enough that you may start feeling wander. Hey, how did lifting up the back of my Jeep have a wander? Now, the other thing is the lean, the original lean, and it was typically kind of droopy on the passenger side. You look at the front of your Jeep and you go, why is the front of my Jeep a little lower on the passenger side? Was it a big deal? No, but it was enough that you noticed. If you drove it yourself, your weight on the driver's seat was probably enough to just about cancel that out.
Yeah.
It comes from a simple fact. Open your hood on your TJ and step back. And there's a centerline rib that goes down the middle of the TJ hood. It's a reinforcement rib. It's on the center line of the body.
Yeah.
Look down, straight down, and see where the engine is. And you're going to go, the engine's not in the center of my Jeep. And the answer is no, it's not. It's offset to the passenger side 1 inch or 2. I didn't measure it for 2 reasons. One, you got your whole intake and exhaust on the driver's side of the engine, and
Yeah.
you got to make room for it.
Of course.
But the real reason is down below. Where's your front drive differential? It's to push the engine over to clear the differential on a rebound. And so they off-centered the engine, and this is way more common than anybody believes. You go out and start actually measuring from a frame rail to the sides of engine blocks on all sorts of vehicles. You're going to find that engines are moved off to one side or the other, or they're not even straight down the center line. They're cocked at an angle. They're also not level. Newsflash here, if you haven't figured that out, it's more the common thing that people know, is almost every engine tips down from 4 to 7 degrees from front to back. And that's to get the driveline angle pointing at the differential so you have less angularity on your drive shaft.
Right.
The downside is it increases the angularity on the front. But that's considered secondary. Most of them, you do have a disconnect where you're not spinning the front end. So, that's why a lot of the older Jeeps have a little sticker. If you ever pull the visor down, it basically says 4-wheel drive no faster than 45 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So that's the TJ Lean. It's really just another case of metallurgy, spring dynamics. You can level them out with isolators, or selective. If you buy those lift pucks, the rubber lift pucks from Daystar or a few of the other manufacturers, and then if worst comes to worst, you may have to buy a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch, and play around until you're happy with level. Or you can get new springs. Either way works, or you can just shift all the junk over to the other side that's high that you carry around in the back seat. And generally speaking, if you have the vehicle aligned, the fact that the body leans forward to aft, right to left really isn't critical as long as the 4 wheels are on the ground tracking the same. Having said that, if you have a broken spring or a gross misalignment so that when you turn one way, you got lots of spring travel in the other, it goes clunk on the stop. Yeah, that's not cool. That will get you in big trouble. But I'm talking about the TJ Lean, which is everything feels normal. It looks normal, but you walk around and you look at it either forward to aft or side to side and going, why is my Jeep got its head cocked like a bird on a wire? So that's really all the TJ Lean is the fact that the Jeep never was actually built balanced, the TJs. People will talk about, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. Again, as long as it's a minor lean and you've got a front end alignment that has your camber, caster, and toe in correct for all 4 wheels, and you're tracking. I will tell you, more problems in TJs come from the tracking. And what is tracking? Tracking is also called thrust angle, and that's probably the more proper one. And that is the fact that your rear axle needs to be as close to a perfect 90 degrees off the center line front to back of your Jeep. And when I say how close, the maximum allowable variation is 1/2 of 1 degree. So you can be 89.5 to 90.5 off of true center. And that's at the limit.
Yeah.
Fortunately, and you can't really do much if you have the factory arms. If you get rear control arms that are adjustable,
You got a little more room.
you got a little more room, and actually you can make it perfect. And I would tell you that if you do have those and you go to an alignment shop, they should know that, but make sure you ask them to take the tracking angle to 0. The computers are really good and accurate, and it's just a matter of bumping the nut, on the control arm shaft a little bit one way and a little bit the other, and then locking them tight and then double checking, and it should come in at 0.00. If it's 0.4, if it's 0.25, you're in good zone, or minus 0.25.
Yeah.
And all the minus and the plus means is whether it's canted to the driver's side or to the passenger side. And if you don't want that, if you want the most accurate you can get a Jeep, which is naturally kind of a wandering bug anyway,
Right.
is to get them to do it to 0. You'll feel better getting that part set to zero than you necessarily will wasting a lot of time on toe end. The toe end's important, caster's important, but thrust angle will probably make the biggest feel difference that you'll ever see if you're off.
Yeah.
With that,
So we're going to finally, announce it, if you will.
well, at least make reference to.
Well, basically, the show.
And this is not Kevin's. This is
Yes.
over in the comedic side.
Yes, this is Deltona land.
This is
Right around July, a close friend of the show received a 1942 GPW.
yes.
And for those of you who don't know what that is such an OG Jeep. It's a Ford.
Yeah, it is not an MB.
No.
Okay, which was manufactured by Willys Overland and eventually bought out by Kaiser. And they're the same vehicle with a minor difference. And this is a little history there for you folks. As you know, the original Jeep prototype was Bantam Jeep out of Pennsylvania. Problem was they were such a tiny little company. The War Department kind of was like, well, we love your design, but we need thousands and thousands and 10,000s and 100,000s of these things.
Yeah.
We'll pay you for the design. Thank you very much.
But we got a war to win.
But we got a war to win. That's the nice way of putting it. Other people will tell you it was an evil, whatever. But that was back in the 40s.
Yeah.
And long story short, Willys Overland was contracted to start building 100,000s of these rigs. I think there was like 600,000 produced. But even they couldn't keep up with the demand. And it was then they reached over and tapped old Henry.
Yep. And
Henry, and the way I read the history, Willys Overland kind of gave the evil eye to each other.
yeah.
And now Willys had a better engine, so they ended up producing the Go Devil 4 for both manufacturers. They had a great foundry and a processing, apparently could keep up with the production of the 4-cylinder engine. And the one story, and now this is what I've heard. Please, historians, if you know better, tell me.
Yeah.
But that Ford decided, okay, well, if I'm going to make them, I'm still going to stamp them Ford,
Yeah.
which immediately started Willys stamping them
Willys. Yeah.
which by mid to late 42, the War Department said, stop it.
Yeah.
No logos anywhere. All right. So,
Doing a little more research, we found out that this thing actually saw combat.
yeah,
We don't know
this
where.
is a 42 combat Jeep. And it actually does have witness marks in it, i.e. little holes made by high-speed items traveling. Projectiles. They've been repaired incorrectly, and we're talking about it. But the biggest thing was it looks great, okay, even though there's what I would call later year restoration done to it with, unfortunately, pop rivets and Bondo. So we've got some projects for it, but it's basically sound. And it was hilarious. Several weeks ago, I went over to Deltona and spent the day with them with the goal of getting the GPW started. They had tested it. It did actually run, but unfortunately, due to a poorly installed starter switch and some other hack work, it tried to leave this world through immolation.
Yeah.
Better known as catching fire. And fortunately, it just was a spark fest, and we disconnected batteries, but they went ahead and still got it for a very reasonable price. And we put it on a dolly, and I towed it back to their place where it sat until I could get done with my crap and come over. And, and so we at least begun the repair. The starter switch had been installed incorrectly, and people didn't know how to use it, which is why they busted the switch and sparked like crazy.
20 years ago, this thing was a frame-off restoration, and so that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago. And the frame-off...
It was in a rush.
It was a rush job. Let's just say that. This isn't going to be a ready choose. They're still even discussing what level of resto. I suggested to them, rather than a Concours restoration, which is great. It's expensive, but it's also been done repeatedly. And the ones that get the attention, and this is just Kevin's opinion, please understand that, folks, I'm not trying to put Scott on the spot, is to do a battlefield restoration or a as it came home resto, which means they've got the service manual. Okay. There's also Army bulletins on field repairs that the Jeep should be put back to, or could be put back to how it came home, which means the bullet holes will be opened back up, cleaned up, and look like they were there. Or if they're taken out, they'll be patched, not with modern pop rivets, but with the regular handset rivets that would have been authorized in the field of battle. Other things that needed to be fixed. I mean, you get underneath, you can see the sins with there's it just looks like somebody handed Rosie the Riveter a brand new pop rivet gun and she went nuts. But mechanically, it's great. Body is actually solid, other than those areas that need to be reworked. The starter switch had been installed incorrectly. It's supposed to be installed from underneath the Jeep, poking through a hole. Well, they didn't want to do that, so they hacked a big square hole. And it caused it to be mounted incorrectly, which caused shorting and just as this whole thing. It's had a alternator conversion, but it's still 6 volts. So there's a 6 volt alternator, which is almost harder to find than a 6 volt generator. So there's these kinds of little things, but it's still got its military blackout lights, the original switches. I think there's one gauge that's incorrect. There's a Sun Pro gauge in there. It still has an amp meter as opposed to a voltmeter, which is great. I mean, it's all there. It's got the manual wipers where you have a little crank handle above the windshield that you go to try and see as you're driving in the middle of a combat. So anyway, it's really cool. I don't know. I'll leave it up to you if you want to post a link on our Facebook page. Well, we're
gonna document it and everything, and once we get all the videos up and all that, we'll post the link to where the majority of the links will be, but it'll be through us,
right? And we're gonna and understand that Autumn, is the lead on this. She is doing the work. Yes, I am teaching. Scott is helping, but it's Autumn's project here, boys and girls. This is not Kevin and Scott doing a restoration. This is Autumn doing the restoration with some guidance, because she'll be the first to tell you this is entirely new to her. She's really excited and really gung-ho on it. The look on her face when we got the thing fired up and running consistently, and then she got in it and took it for a drive was just incredible.
She even got her first Jeep wave.
She did. She got
the dude in the Jeep was like, "What the hell?" Thumbs up, all excited, like a 9-year-old kid driving that other Jeep.
I mean, this thing is authentic enough to the point there is no turn signals. You didn't use turn signals in the war. You didn't want to tell anybody where you were going. And we're talking about ways to make it a little more street legal to get to an event. Yes, it's legal in an event situation for limited driving, but we got to fix brake light switches that don't work. We've got, a few other things here.
It's kind of like the LJ. There's a multitude of sins that we have to go through. Yeah,
we've got to get through it and to bring the thing up to a reliable level of operation. We're talking about some dirty tricks with the old 30s style add-on turn signal switch that you can, making it clamp on so we don't violate the originality, but that we can, with one wire, and this is an old trick that we used to do in the race car world to keep lightweight, but you still had to drive your car to the event, is you'd have this thing that would just clamp on the column, with a little wing nut or a cam lever. This doesn't have a cigarette lighter, but it does have a little bus bar with screws, and you're going to have a power wire. The ground's already taken care of, so to speak, but and you quickly stick under 2 screws, and then a strip and magnetic trailer lights that have your turn signals and stuff in it. So at least you have turn signals, and we can modify them later with a third light for a backup light. But at least turn signals, so that, because Autumn was trying to remember her hand signals, and while that was easy to overcome, nobody on the street knew what the hell hand signals meant anymore.
The hand signals we saw a lot of were people waving, but
and so it's a really, really cool project.
I can't wait to have all 3 lined up, where you have the 42. the LJ and the Gladiator, because that's 80 years right there.
80 years of Jeep experience. And it's got the military universal directional tires on it that ride like absolute crud.
Yeah. Well, because we're looking at the time. Yeah, pretty much. But
and then of course, yes, we're running out of time, but I do have to laugh. The one thing was my cohort over here sitting there going, "Is there something wrong? It's rattling. It sounds like it's got a rod knock. It's like, Scott, it sounds like a 42 Jeep.
Sounds like an old Jeep with a lot of loose parts.
Loose parts.
You're fine. Send it.
And even when you talk to your dad, who's a mechanic,
he's like, listen to Kevin. So what's very interesting is that because I let her take the lead. I let her find this.
Yes,
this is her baby, and
yes, it is.
In the world, and I'm going to end on this last statement. In the world of 40s and 1-tons and V8s, she went 4 cylinders, 27s, and Dana 25s.
Way to go, girl. Way to go, girl. This is going to be a fun project. I look forward to supporting Autumn and you as you learn the trade. This is fun for an old guy because I understand that there's no relays. You're playing direct power. There's no auto choke. You can't even stomp the gas pedal and set the choke like you could in the old carburetor. This has a choke knob. It has a throttle knob. And starting it requires a dance between the two of those, and and a 6-volt system. So this thing cranks with a fully charged battery.
Pretty much.
So we look forward to bringing you more about the 42. And maybe Scott will sneak some pictures up on our Facebook page.
Oh, real quickly back to the one thing, and because man, I really gotta go. But the interesting thing is, we do it back to the Willie stamp thing.
Yeah,
is that Ford give one last middle finger and did the F stamped parts. So there's
the
F
nuts, the bolts,
logo.
the fenders, the chair frames. All have the script F on them.
Yeah, which is really
not
cool.
all of them though.
Not all of them, but there is a lot of F stamp parts on that Jeep, which is interesting.
And folks, we're not going to steal all the thunder right now. There's more to do about that F stamp later that shows you that this Jeep has been through hell and back.
Exactly. Well, with that, I think it's time we lock the hubs, put the Jeep in 4 low, and hit the trail.
Sounds good.
And as always, remember to take nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash when you leave the trail.
Yes. We want to keep the trails open for our children and our children's children, and hopefully the rest of ad infinitum.
Absolutely.
Cheers, folks.
Later.
Bye. Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.